5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to the Gringo Show. Thank you so much for joining us tonight from Paseo de la Reforma here in Mexico City. Tonight's show is going to tackle something that is on the minds of so many in the US and Mexico, the role of the police in both countries. And we have Dr. David Perez Esparza on the show, who is the head of the National Information Center for the Mexican government, to talk about the security situation in the country and how police reform is progressing under the AMLO administration. And if you're here to laugh, don't worry about that too. But anyway, do you think I'm funny? Do you think I'm a clown? Do I amuse you? No. Hey, Edgar, let the viewers talk. They're big boys and girls. I make you laugh. I'm here to amuse you. What do you mean funny? Funny how? How am I funny? All right, I guess it's a good old Goodfellas reference for any of you guys who didn't know it. But we have Kings on a Golf Course, fireworks near the new airport, the second season of the Luis Miguel series, and will Cruz Azul ever win? A lot of good stuff going on, so definitely stay with us. Big news tonight, AMLO finally got vaccinated. The Mexican president was administered the AstraZeneca vaccine on Tuesday morning to demonstrate that it is safe and that others should follow suit. He didn't look happy, and he resisted for a while, and I'm thinking because he was like, I don't want anyone to know I'm over 60. Señor Presidente, I think everyone knows you're over 60. It's pretty much all over the internet and on Wikipedia. Liar! My people think I'm 42. And what's Wikipedia? The Mexican authority overseeing the construction of the new Felipe Angeles Airport requested the cancellation of the logo submitted to the Federal Intellectual Property Office. As we reported on last week's show, the logo of the new airport included a large woolly mammoth, supposedly because they found a lot of bones at the dig site. I'm thinking they canceled it because they saw our show last week and all 20 people who watch it were angry and protested to the government. My best friend, my maid, and all the people I pay to watch it, right, was going out and saying stuff to the government. Said Miguel the woolly mammoth, am I still getting paid for it? Woo! I have no idea how to make the noise of a woolly mammoth. It's been extinct for 1,000 years. I need a break. The only reference I have is the Flintstones. Speaking of the new airport, there has been a major conflict because the new airport is being built right next to a zone where fireworks and firecrackers are produced. Concerned citizens of Toltepec and Zumpango protested in front of the El Palacio Nacional last week because the proximity to the airport would restrict them from making these fireworks. I think this issue has got to be resolved. Imagine, hey, this firework, 5,000 big explosions, lots of colors, great bang for your buck. Mira. Uh-oh. Whoops. I think they're going to need to move the factory. Really. The city of Querétaro has famous people like Maximilian Hernán Cortés, but last week there was a meeting of kings at a large green area in the back of the palace to negotiate a territorial dispute. This took place after the traditional sharing of alcohol and other libations. Let's go take a look at exclusive footage of this historic meeting. Now we know they are my kings. They are not your kings. They are mi reyes, because the moves they made in battle are very similar to what you see with royalty. This is the move of the reverse tough guy, where the dude hits the guy on the head and runs away. Yeah, right. He hits him, does a little backtrack. Perfect move. So I'm guessing if you're ready to surrender in this royal battle, the way you do it is to say, yeah, yeah, yeah. And that means it's over. Take a look. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is the I'm 30 years older than you, but let me hit you in the back and hope that you won't hit your grandpa move. Was this one the start of a gay porno on a golf course, B, an impromptu rugby match, or C, a group hug?
Ya, cabrones, no mamen.
It looks most like a gay porno, but I'm going to say all three. Last week, a taxi driver in the state of Mexico attempted to drive over a pedestrian bridge. He literally drove up the stairs across a 40-meter bridge and then drove down the steps and got stuck right before he reached the bottom. This is not a joke. And of course, you'd figure this would happen in the state of Mexico. I call it the Florida of Mexico. No, there are no beaches, but it's where ridiculous things happen and where people just can't drive. But funny enough, the taxi's license plate was from Mexico City. No lie. I can't even imagine why this guy decided to drive over the bridge. His wife was nagging him to get home and he wanted a faster way. He was dared by his friends, 50 pesos if you drive over that bridge. Wanted to beat the traffic? I have no idea. He was asked why did the taxi driver cross the road using a pedestrian bridge, and he said to get to the other side, of course. Luis Miguel, the series debuted its second season on Netflix yesterday, and fans were crazy. Funny, I watched it, and it felt eerily familiar to Michael Jackson's series, like it was copied or something. Come on, guys, I know he's a legend, but every song he does was copied by Michael Jackson. You all know that. In sports news, Cruz Azul tied its fierce rival Club America in the Mexico City Classic on Saturday, remaining on top of the standings by 2 points in the Liga MX Soccer League. If you're a new fan of the team or looking to be a Villa Melon or jump on the bandwagon, slow down. They're going to do something to screw it up. Up by 2, but score 3 golazos, fire the entire team before the playoffs, walk on the field and just give the trophy to the team before the game actually starts. Or you can actually go to Caliente and bet on them to win, tie, or screw it up somehow. So good luck, Cruz Azul fans, especially Fernando and Ken specifically. But I can relate. I'm a Mets fan. We're doomed to failure. We're cursed. Tonight's main story is about policing, as it's been a topic that has been in the news both in the US and Mexico quite frequently in the past year. The US has been gripped by the killing of George Floyd by Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. If you are not familiar with this case, Chauvin last summer put Minneapolis resident George Floyd into a chokehold after detaining him for trying to pay at a convenience store with a counterfeit $20 bill. It resulted in his death, which was witnessed by bystanders and filmed for millions of people to see. This sparked mass protests across the country about police brutality. Chauvin was charged with murder, but historically, police officers are usually found not guilty, especially if the victim is black. But on Tuesday, the jury found him guilty of murdering George Floyd. The entire country breathed a huge sigh of relief. It was a historic ruling. Unfortunately, that outcome is rare. Early last week, a 20-year-old black man named Dante Wright was shot by a police officer only miles away from where George Floyd was shot after being pulled over for having an air freshener hanging from his car's rear view mirror. The chief of the department has said she intended to draw her taser, but accidentally drew her gun instead, killing Wright. Yeah, compelling, right? She messed up and pulled her gun instead. These are just 2 instances of many encounters throughout history where police used excessive force on minorities that were not necessary, but probably used because of the color of their skin. We don't really hear anything about the treatment of immigrants from Mexico or Central America in the United States because there's even less advocacy, and because they're in the country illegally, they may have less rights. Because of the attacks on September 11th and the threat of terrorism, both international and domestic, police departments have been increasingly militarized. arming with tanks and gear you would only see in the movies.
The defense industry has become a major player in the domestic homeland security market, estimated to be worth over $20 billion in goods and services.
Flashbangs, tear gas, rubber bullets, helicopters, armored vehicles.
See, this is why some people want to defund the police, because they believe that too much policing is not always good. Others think it's ridiculous that more security keeps people safe, especially if something bad, really bad happens. But let's go over to Mexico, where in late March, police in Tulum tackled 36-year-old Salvadorian refugee Victoria Salazar to the ground and broke her spine, killing her in the process. It was caught on social media. Take a look. It brought to light the horrible treatment by police of another minority group, women, with an average of 10 women killed every day in 2020. And it's not just that the police are killing women, but don't take action when there are calls for help due to domestic abuse or other threats. Women took to the streets in recent years to protest this, vandalizing historical centers and monuments because they believed they needed to do something bold to give attention to this injustice that has existed for many years. It is argued that the police in Mexico are underfunded, that police officers are poorly trained and often only will take action if they are bribed to do so. My point is, maybe some of the issues are different, but the result is the same. Many people in the US and Mexico fear the police, especially if you are in a minority group. Even Americans in Mexico worry, like John Roberts here, an expat who has lived in Mexico for many years.
And to be honest, guys, the only thing you have to be actually worry about are the cops.
I knew that was coming.
The cops. That's it. I mean,
to talk more about this, we welcome Dr. David Perez Esparza, Director of National Information Center in the National Public Security System, to the show. Dr. Perez, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Dr. Perez, my first question is if you're a woman, if you're poor, if you're indigenous, are you going to get treated differently by the police here in Mexico?
Yeah, absolutely. But it also depends where. I think Mexico is a very huge country, has a very complex dynamics. Organized crime behaves differently according to the state, according to the time, according to the type of crime, and police also behave differently. So it is about time, about space, and I think these are, as any other country, very important determinants about the risk of having a good relationship or not with the police.
Right, I understand. How is police brutality here? I mean, we saw the instance in Quintana Roo, and of course, we've been talking about in the US, it's been happening constantly. Do you feel that in Mexico, it's as big as a problem as it is in the US?
I don't think so. I think, police brutality actually is clearly a problem in Mexico, but I think it behaves differently than it does in the US. I think the problem in Mexico regarding police brutality is about some specific times, some specific settings. For instance, the relationship between organized crime groups and the police, it's very different than it happens in the US. And as I was mentioning before, it also depends on the state, for instance, what kind of organized crime group is basically operating there. So it has a different component. Also, the amount of guns that are available makes everything different. We don't have this situation that clear as in the US about the black population versus the white population. We have that, but it's a different way. I think the mestizo culture, I think, makes everything different in Mexico.
Sure.
You can probably see that concerning the indigenous groups and some other vulnerable groups, but I don't think it happens the same kind of brutality in Tulum, as you were mentioning, than probably in New Orleans or any other city that has a different component.
Right. Now, I know you're working on a program because after 2006, when the Calderon administration was in, they centralized police,
yeah.
Right? They gave power to the federal police and took it away from the municipalities because of corruption.
Absolutely.
And that went through the Peña Nieto administration. Now it seems that in the AMLO administration, you're giving power back to the local police. Well,
yes.
Why is that happening?
Well, the national strategy of the current president López Obrador has two main doors, two main pillars. On the one hand, you have the National Guard, which is basically something that is new. It's similar to other strategies around the world, similar to what happened in Colombia, in Italy, probably in Chile, which is basically the use of armed force combined with civil service, and that's National Guards, no?
Right.
With other differences.
Which was the federal police, but transformed.
Basically
there,
transformed and with a very, very clear territorial component and focus. But on the other hand, you have a national police reform system, which in Spanish we call it Modelo Nacional de Policía, which has the main purpose of reforming the local police, basically the city police, which is basically 2,000 police, and the state police, which is basically 32 state police across the country.
Are you afraid that giving power back to the local police, corruption will increase again? Because I know that back in the day, the drug cartels that were in these local areas were working with the local police, and there was not order.
Yeah.
And there was a change there to try to maintain some kind of civil order inside these localities. Are you afraid that might happen again?
I mean, risk always exists. That's true. And particularly when you talk about as a complicated and a complex setting as in Mexico, you always have the risk of corruption. And I think you have to be aware of that when you design or when you implement policies. You have to be aware of the risk. Fortunately, we have systems and strategies and programs that help us to mitigate those risks. We have Control de Confianza, which is basically this set of techniques that are basically designed to focus on people who might be more vulnerable for corruption or to corruption. No? But I think that's not the real problem in Mexico. Now, you talk about as a main focus on the police institution is about capabilities, about resources, and I think that's probably equally important as corruption sometimes, and probably is correlated with corruption. You know?
Right.
So I wouldn't say it's a massive risk. You have to take into account. You have to mitigate it, understand it, but I don't think that is a most important problem.
I understand, but sometimes I think that if police officers in Mexico City are making on average of 13,000 pesos a month, which is about $560 US, don't you think there's some incentive for the police to make corruption and to take bribes? Because it doesn't seem like $550 a month is a livable wage.
No, it is not. It is not. And I think it's important to make it clear. One of the key points, the key goals of this strategy is to make the police forces as a top priority, and this implies identifying that salaries, identifying that equipment and information are key strategies to make police decent, humans. And I think it's something that probably sounds like a very obvious from Western rich country perspective. But when you talk about Mexico, you have to consider that police is basically the last resource you have for working in a decent place. It's clearly the opposite of the best place to work so far.
Right.
And I think we want to change that. We want to change the conditions, the human conditions. We want to make people happy working in the police. And that implies a massive structural reform from its very foundational keys.
Absolutely. Let's switch gears a little bit because you're in charge of information and statistics. Absolutely. And I know that sometimes what the media reports is different than what's happening. What do you think the biggest disconnect is between what's really happening in your statistics and what the media is saying about safety in the country?
Well, I think you have to take into account that for media, scandals are business. Mm-hmm. So, and it happens here, it happens in the UK, it happens in Africa, it happens in Asia. When you understand that for media, for someone who works in the media, the scandal, the crisis, this is basically what makes it money.
Right.
And that's something normal of democracies. And I think we shouldn't be afraid of that. It's something normal. It happens in the US. It happens in this case of Floyd. But in the case of Mexico, I think media, in academia, in society, we should be more prepared to use data in a very smart way to understand what's going on really. For instance, in the case of Mexico, homicide has been reducing during this year, and it has been reducing since AMLO is in power. But I'm very confident to say that not everyone in the country assumes that.
Right.
I would say that probably no one actually knows that.
No, I definitely didn't think that. I thought it was on the rise.
No,
you hear
it
all these
wasn't
mass
the rise.
graves that are being found.
I mean, and this is clearly a huge problem. And
right.
I think we cannot deny that. But I mean, if I tell you that homicide reduces 4% this year compared to the last year, it's something that no one knows in Mexico. So
of course, the narcos were in quarantine too, right?
That's
a thing that happened, right?
Yeah.
You know, with cubrebocas and everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, at the end of the day, you have to understand that COVID actually makes a difference. Mm. But most of the crime, for instance, car theft and other crimes, started to reduce before COVID.
Okay.
So I think it's related, and I think we need more evidence, to need more data to actually understand what's the role of COVID in crime. Most
Right.
people, when I don't know if you remember, when Mexico, at least when we have this debate and COVID started, people say, "Oh, with COVID, it's going to be a massive crisis. Everyone's going to be killing each other for food," and you don't see that either.
Yeah. Well,
So-
I mean, my kitchen is stacked with soups and
And
pretzels.
you don't feel threat. You
Yeah, I
don't feel
never had to
particularly
use.
threat.
No, and it's interesting that you're saying that because a lot of Americans are thinking that Mexico is crime infested because you have a small killing in Puebla,
Mhm.
and then a woman from Topeka, Kansas, is scared to send her daughter to Cancun. Right?
Yeah,
I mean, these are the
yeah.
disconnected.
It's a massive country. It's a massive country.
Right.
It's the size of Europe.
Yep.
You have to consider that. I mean, Chihuahua is the size of Germany. Right?
Yep.
So when you understand that and you put this in perspective, you see that Mexico is a large country, it's a highly populated country. 127 million people live here.
Right.
You have cities such as Mexico City, such as Monterrey, such as Guadalajara. You have rural areas in Michoacán. You have the coast in Acapulco. You have Cancun. And all of this is Mexico. And it's the same in the U.S. But
Yeah, but I would
sometimes-
say so. Someone gets killed in Newark, you know, you're not going to be scared to go to
Arkansas
Topeka, Kansas,
or whatever.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I have time for one more question. Tell us one statistic that you've seen that would be very surprising to us. So something really interesting for us.
Probably more than statistics, I will make a comparison and say that some places in the U.S., in the southeast and southwest particularly, some places in Louisiana, for instance, are much more dangerous than the average Mexican town.
Okay. Well, Dr. Perez, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
Dr.
for the invitation.
David Perez Esparza, the head of the National Information Center. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, that does it for this edition of The Gringo Show. Hope you enjoyed it as much as you would have enjoyed looking at your friend from high school's cute new puppy or baby. Ah, how cute, swipe. Ah, how cute, swipe. Ah, how cute for the 98th time. So definitely if you want to see more of us, please follow us on YouTube or Facebook Live. And if you're in Mexico City and we know it's hot out there, wouldn't you enjoy eating a jalapeno and cheddar sausage while you're sweating? I know I would. Please visit our sponsor, Pinche Gringo Barbecue, for the best jalapeno and cheddar sausage in town at our website where you can order online or at Uber Eats as well. Stay tuned next week for our No, It's Not Independence Day edition of The Gringo Show, our Cinco de Mayo special. It's a show you do not want to miss. So until then, have a great week.
Pinche Gringo, Mexico is laughing thanks to you. We like to watch you dance salsa and listen to your bad Spanish too. We like to watch you almost die from spicy food.